Welcome to the Real Estate Niche Show, a show that focuses on top real estate professionals who specialize in different niches of real estate. My name is Ben Kogut. Join me as we dive deep into the professional and personal lives of the experts of the real estate industry. Welcome to the Real Estate Niche Show. I'm your host, Ben Kogut. Today, I have an incredible human being named Logan Freeman on the show today. Logan is the key principal, co-founder, and chief development officer of FTW Investments. Mr. Freeman oversees the company's acquisitions and investment strategies. He also personally selects all the key investment markets and asset classes to meet the goals of investors. He is known as Mr. Kansas City. He was an All-American collegiate football athlete at the University of Central Missouri, where he graduated in 2013. And after his final season in college, he was actually picked up as an undrafted free agent to the Oakland Raiders. Logan, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, Ben. We've been building our relationship over the past couple of years. It's been wonderful. Learning from you and getting to meet you in person, and excited to be here and dropping some hopefully really useful information today.
I appreciate that so much for being here, and I equally appreciate the relationship that we've been able to build over the last couple of years. So maybe give us a little bit more background about recent background about what's gotten you to where you're at right now with FTW.
Yeah, man, everything changed about 2 years ago. And everything changed in the commercial real estate world. Everything changed in regards to what my focus was. And it's been an incredible journey, a great learning experience, been blessed, to have some success over the last 2 years. But what led us here was listening to the market. So pre-COVID, let's jump back to 2019. And at the end of 2019, I was really interested in this kind of trend of, okay, multifamily seems to be continuing to be a competitive space. And I see a big opportunity in neighborhood retail shopping centers and triple net leases. I had been brokering those types of assets, so had a lot of familiarity with those. One of my business partners was a principal at MRP, which is Midwest Retail Properties. And, they specialized in Walmart shadow anchored shopping centers across the country in tertiary markets. So we had a lot of experience in this, and nobody else was really, not nobody, you for sure. HJH is definitely focused on that stuff, but less competition in that space. And so we had this bullish kind of investment thesis pre-COVID to get some of these assets in our portfolio. We already have one, but we wanted to get more. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about what the pitch looks like. We went out to the Intelligent Investors Real Estate Conference in California, Hunter Thompson's event, and everybody was talking about this. So I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is a great trend. So we went out and put about $25 or $30 million worth of that real estate under contract in Kansas City, and then boom, March of 2020 happened. And nobody knew what was going to happen, especially with, retail properties and things like that, commercial real estate just in general. And so we ended up dropping all of those properties and all those contracts just to kind of see, what was going to happen in the marketplace, refocused and said, well, what is something that we think will be, okay in this time period? And that was multifamily. And thankfully, the opportunity presented itself to purchase a lot of real estate in the Midwest on the multifamily side because everybody was really uncertain. Now, we've studied fundamentals. We've studied a lot of different pieces of the puzzle and felt very strongly that, there might be a short window for us to get what everybody was calling COVID pricing. And everybody was talking about COVID pricing, but nobody was really purchasing. And we did. And so we purchased about 1,000 units in about 12 months. And so the journey now, since that's been almost 2 years ago, right, is how do we operate these efficiently and continue to implement business plans and continue to grow? So we'll complete about 6 or 7 projects this year. I'm proud to say one of those deals is a triple net lease office here in Kansas City, which I'm very excited about. But the bulk of them still in the multifamily space. And so we've been building up a team. And so now we have about 12 or 13 individuals full-time that are working at FTW to make sure business plans are implemented, construction is overseen, communication to investors is top notch. And that's something we were talking about offline here. And that just kind of leads us to where we're at right now, which is about 1,400 units, not just in Kansas and Missouri, but now in Nebraska and Iowa as well. And we're working on continuing to expand that footprint into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and a few other markets that we see that have same fundamentals that Kansas City did. So that's where we're at right now. Still grinding away every single day, and enjoying the process, but learning a lot and working through obviously challenges that comes with when you're doing value add commercial real estate deals.
Oh man, incredible journey. And I know that you have been sharing a lot of these stories on your, is it a podcast, the Compression podcast?
Absolutely. Weekly Compression podcast.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Like what was the idea there?
So the idea here, Ben, was to say, okay, this was last year, this time, actually, November of last year, was say, okay, what have I done, in regards to volume the last 3 years? Okay. And it was, between 25 and 50 million each year. And I said, okay, well, what if I could compress those 3 years into one and not try to work harder, but actually, work on leverage is the main component or the mental model that I've been working on all year long. And, the Compression podcast is a kind of a diary, so to speak. It's it's kind of a counseling session. I have a co-host on that podcast. But it's also to show folks that if you have a big, hairy, audacious goal, there are systems and processes and habits that you can create that will actually yield to those results. And if you tune in, you get a weekly kind of download of what's going on. And we're closing in on the $100 million mark this year, which is very exciting. It's going to be a push to get there by the end of the year, but that's what the Compression podcast is. It's using kind of mental models and the laws of nature to help you kind of attract what you want into your life and not necessarily work harder, so to speak. And so it's been a fun journey so far. It's a lot of work to bring content on a weekly basis like that to all of the listeners. But more than anything, it's to be self-aware for myself and to hold myself accountable to our investors, to our partners, to all of our vendors, and to our personal lives and our families and our children and our wives and husbands as well. So it's been a great journey, man, and something I'd like to document on a regular basis. And we've had some really good feedback about the Compression podcast this year.
Nice. Oh my gosh, there's so much I want to unpack there. But the direction I want to go is kind of tying it back to what you were talking about earlier about growing and now the podcast. And you got a family. What would you say have been some of the question I want to ask, because this is where we learn, what have been some of the biggest mistakes? And the follow-up to that is, what have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned on this journey so far?
Yeah, biggest mistakes is really personally, and focusing mostly on, your success being based off of achievement. And, in essence, the Compression podcast is an achievement-based podcast, but I'm an achievement-based guy. But when you think about systems and habits, it's really important to understand that, what you do today is not necessarily going to yield direct results tomorrow. And you have to find confidence and you have to find sustainability, knowing that you have a system on a regular basis that will yield you results in the future, and being okay delaying gratification right now for something greater down the road. And so that's been kind of the biggest lesson learned. Biggest mistake for me is trying to do too much, and making sure that I delegate the right way, because I've always been kind of a self-starter and an entrepreneur, kind of, a visionary, so to speak. And I want to hold everything really close to me. Well, when you start to scale and you start to get to the capacity that we're at, you have to eliminate, automate, and delegate. You have to use the focus funnel that Rory Vaden talks about in his book, Procrastination on Purpose. And so a biggest mistake for me was not delegating in the right way. And that's been a big learning lesson for me over this last 12 months is how do I delegate? How do I communicate effectively to delegate in the right way? What should I eliminate and what can I automate? And that's what's trying to, that's what I'm trying to do, is create leverage in that capacity to allow me to focus on the most valuable priorities, relationships, and items that are going to move our business forward. And that's been a learning lesson across this last 12 months to allow me to kind of hone in on what those things are, and kind of create a new sustainability model in my own personal and professional life, because we're young guys, we're going to be at this for a long time. You have to enjoy it, but you also can't get burnt out, and you have to be able to be sustainable over a long period of time and not just have short kind of stints of growth. So those are the mistakes that I've made and some of the biggest lessons that I've learned over the last 12 months, Ben.
Yeah, and it's clear that you have grown. I mean, you wouldn't be at this point if you hadn't started putting all those systems in place. I mean, it's next to impossible to get to this level, and the momentum that you have behind you is just gonna. I mean, I might have to interview you another time a year from now to see where you're probably going to be beyond the $200 million mark at that point.
That would be the goal. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I want to tie it back, the goals and all that, into the podcasting, because I'm pretty new to this podcasting thing, and I've seen you, and you're an inspiration for me, and all that you've been able to do. And what's been the impact? What have been sort of lessons learned with your podcasting?
Yeah, you think of podcasting kind of two ways, right? Is you want to make sure you get your message out, but you also, want to be a producer of content as well for thought leadership and brand authority. That being said, you can find a ton of podcasts to be on a regular basis. The biggest lesson for me is batching in regards to video content.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, when you are running a business and you are doing deals and you have a team and you have internal meetings and you have all these different things that you're trying to accomplish, it's really difficult if you try to throw a podcast in there in the middle of 3 internal meetings, investor calls, underwriting models. And so what I've been able to do is figure out a way to try to batch all of my video recordings on Fridays, to allow me to get through the week and then kind of finish strong and get reinvigorated on Fridays and go into the weekend with the right mindset. What I was doing earlier was, it'd be a Tuesday afternoon and I have weekly investment committee at 2:00, and I'd be running from my home office to my other office because I didn't want to record the podcast there because, I don't have all the video stuff that I do here, and I want the content to look really good. And I said, well, what would make this easy, right? It's a Tim Ferriss question. What would this look like if this was easy? I said, well, look, I might miss out on some podcasts, but I'm only going to record on Fridays, and
Sure.
If I am going to record on other periods of time, then I'm going to make sure I have white space before and after, because I pour myself into these things, and, I'm tired afterwards, mentally fatigued.
Sure.
And I realized I can do about 2, 3 at the max a day. When I started to do 4 or 5 or 6, man, I really just started to not enjoy the content creation anymore. So that was the first lesson. The second lesson is, hey, I'm not an editor, and I got to find somebody that once this raw content is done, I can send it and it gets packaged up in the right way and it's out there and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And so those 2 pieces in regards to the content creation is what has allowed me to continue to stay really consistent with it.
And what have been the results, the benefits, I don't know, have you gotten investors? Have you just built relationships? Like what do you think maybe I could expect after, putting all this content out, the Real Estate Niche Show?
Well, especially being on other people's podcasts, obviously your message gets out to their power base, which is really important. And it's really yields a lot of results. So we've received a lot of feedback from investors and folks that have listened to podcasts or found us on somebody else's podcast and say, hey, I've been interested in the Midwest, and I heard you on this podcast, and I want to talk to you about what you guys have going on. So it's definitely brought new relationships, new co-GP relationships, deal flow, and investors in. And that's just because our message is out there playing on other people's podcasts all of the time, which is really important. The second part is, from the brand authority piece, folks might follow us on podcasts for, 6 months before they reach out. And when they do, they say, holy cow, man, I feel like I know who your family is. I feel like I know, a lot about you as a person, as an individual. You're honest and transparent on these podcasts. And, that's a big piece of building kind of a relationship before we even have those first calls with people, which just elevates those calls to be very beneficial. So those are kind of the two things that I would say you should expect. Lastly is learning. Whenever I was hosting the Live Free Investors podcast during COVID, I had some really great guests on, you being one of those guests. And launching that was, I got to sit down and learn and get a pulse on the market and what other people were thinking about in real time, across the country. And that built relationships, but it also helped me learn throughout that process as well. This is not a skill that just comes naturally to a lot of people, being on video and being able to talk and being informational and keeping the conversation going. It's not easy, it's just not. And so if you can build that skill and that, have that tool in your toolbox, I tell you what, man, it makes it very important. And then I think the last one is just, people see us showing up on a regular basis. So we're not going dark. We're out there, we're talking, we're going out there, we're trying to make things happen. And people can really expect something on a daily basis from somebody on the FTW team. That makes it feel like, hey, these guys are out there working hard on a regular basis. And I think that's really important as well.
So is your goal to put something out every day?
We are putting content out almost every single day, either whether that be a native new video, something off of the Compression podcast, or a organic post on LinkedIn. Absolutely. What got started me on this was Yona Weiss's commercial real estate 10-day challenge, 2 years ago. And I just never stopped. And I said, well, I don't need to post once. What if we post 4 times a day? And so compression, we made an acronym, and it's called Being a Compressor. And this is from Tim Grover's book, Cooler, Cleaner, and Closer, right? And he said the highest level is a cleaner. Well, I wanted to elevate that one more level and say, well, I think there's something above a cleaner, and that's a compressor. Cleaners are really good at one thing, and that's fine. But I can't choose to be just good at my job. I have to be, first and foremost, a child of God. Second, a husband to my wife. And third, a father to my kids. And then I have to focus on my fitness. And then I can focus on my future, which is obviously FTW. And so something like that across that spectrum every single day, putting that out there has been really an awesome journey. It's not easy to do. It takes a team, and, it takes a lot of work. But at the end of the day, it's free marketing. It's free advertising in some capacity. And it builds that authority, which is the most important thing when you're starting to talk and build new relationships with people.
Man, I love all those points. I love your thought process. The compressor thing is incredible. Shout out again to Yona Weiss. He also, in his 10-day LinkedIn challenge, was what got me going. That's what got us connected through the Next Level Mastermind.
Absolutely.
Shout out Adam Carswell and I and Mobina and the team. We all created just because we wanted to bring people together and collaborate and find ways to take all aspects of our lives to the next level.
Yep.
And so one of the things that you had mentioned that I really wanted to also ask about is just like when you've been interviewing people, right? So I'm at the beginning of my journey of interviewing people. Any advice on that process?
Yeah, I think that you can have your standard questions that you want to go through, but when I first got started interviewing people, I definitely stuck to those. But by the end of that journey, I think the Live Free Investor podcast ended around 70 some episodes, and it just was a time in the market where it made sense to do that. And then obviously I rebranded to FTW, and I didn't want to be confusing out there with the communication. I learned that if I did a little research on maybe listening to them on a different podcast previously, I wanted to make sure I try to pull out things that they may spoke about. And so I wanted to make it very, personalized to them. So I would listen to an episode and then I would pull that in. I would have a few stock questions that I always wanted to get people's feedback on, right?
Sure.
But I then just became more fluid and the conversation started to go in one direction. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing is a lot of folks that have been on the podcast tours will have a tangent that they want to get on. And I said, look, that's great. I think that that's a good message, but I'd have to reel people in, and get back kind of on what we were trying to focus on a little bit. And being okay doing that was a difficult kind of progression for me, but if you do it the right way, it made the content much better. And I think a lot of people enjoyed that they would get something new from these folks. And I was really trying to understand the psychology behind this, right? I mean, there's a lot of tactics, there's a lot of strategies, but guys and gals that have been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years that I was interviewing, I said, I was really trying to understand what has allowed you to stay sustainable. What have you learned over all of these different cycles? And if you could go back and start 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and know what you know now, what is that thing that you would be doing differently? Or where would you have done? What is one thing that you would have done differently? And that was a really fun question for me to kind of pull out of people. And then I would pull in questions from Tim Ferriss, his book, either Tribe of Mentors or Tools of Titans. And because he perfected a lot of those questions, and I loved reading those books, and I would kind of pepper in some of those questions too. And definitely people never heard, like the question of, if you could have a billboard, hypothetically speaking, that millions of people would see every single day, what would be the one message that would be on that billboard? You start to understand how people think. And at the end of the day, as sponsors, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, people want to understand how you're thinking. And that was what I was trying to pull out. So those are some tips that I found to be really helpful when I was interviewing other people.
Let's go with that, Logan. If you had a billboard, what would be the message on it?
Oh man, I would say that you are enough. I literally would probably just say you are enough. I think so many folks in this space and just in life in general try to be something that they're not. And my whole message has always been try to understand who you are, because that's unique, special, and awesome. And then, exemplify that, and kind of run with that and own that. And you don't have to be like everybody else. You need to find your own unique voice and push on that instead of focusing on trying to be something that you're not. So you are enough would probably be the message that I would put up there.
You hear that, everybody? You are enough.
Yeah.
He means it, and I mean it as well. I want to circle back because I just have been so impressed with the content that you put out also on LinkedIn. And it's prolific, and it's incredible, and it's thought-provoking, and just curious, like, what, besides just frankly putting out content, what is your strategy as far as like what kind of content to put out there?
Yeah, so that's been an iterative process as well. Obviously, I think the best thing that I can give people is sign up for all of the different newsletters. And there's a tool that I use. It's called unroll.me, unroll.me. And
Amen.
I have all of my subscriptions kind of rolled up to one email per day. And I look at that and say, okay, what links or what articles are interesting? And then I write a quick blurb and send that off to the marketing team so they can then repurpose that, create a graphic on it, and then post it out. But, it's like 3 insights from this. I read this article, I've got 3 insights from this, and then I'll share that. But being able to be on the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, National Multifamily Housing Council, all of the different newsletters, they put out great content on a regular basis. So being an aggregator of content is okay. You don't have to necessarily come up with something unique and different every single day. And it doesn't have to be brand new. You can repurpose and reuse if you put your own spin on it and say, here are 2 things that I got out of this article, and then post that up and then ask a thought-provoking question on that. And so that's been the best way that I've been able to continue to get out links and things like that. In regards to just like native video content, I kind of have 2 methodologies on that. One, I want to share what we're doing on a regular basis. So the best thing to be a thought leader is to be interesting yourself. And so to be interesting yourself, you need to do interesting things. And so when you're out there doing interesting things, document that really quickly. Don't get out of the moment and be on your phone the whole time, but take a quick moment to grab a picture or grab a video and, just document that and then go repurpose that. Subtitles are crucial on LinkedIn because a lot of people peruse while they're in meetings or things like that. And so you want to make sure your videos have subtitles on them so people can listen or so they can read what you're saying instead of having to actually turn it on. So that's a big tip as well. The unroll.me is a tip. Share what you're doing, be interesting. And then the second one is try to find something one time a week, or at least, I try to do it one time a day that is really focused on your industry. So for example, yesterday I put a video up about Zillow. Everybody saw the headlines that Zillow is losing $550 million and selling 7,000 homes and at a loss. And it's like, look, okay, if I can compare that with Charlie Munger's margin of safety mental model and put that into one post, boom, I'll put that in a video and put it out. And that thing got over 1,500 views on LinkedIn. And so, just things like that are really tied to your niche and your market is extremely important to share as well.
And incredible content there, Logan. Thanks so much for that.
Absolutely.
We're going to pivot a little bit and start talking about some of the questions that I had prompted you with. And the first one being, what was the worst or the first or both, maybe it's the same, job that you've ever had?
Yeah. So first job I ever had was doing dishes at a catering business when I was 14 years old. Shortly after that, I started sweeping the floors and doing all of the cleanup work there, but I also started baling hay. And I wouldn't say it's the worst job that I've had because I learned so much. I learned how to use my hands, how to fix problems, and how to work hard. So, throwing hay on the back of a trailer in 100-degree Missouri summers was not easy. It wasn't a fun thing to do. Doing dishes for 5 hours in a dish pit was not a fun thing to do. But it helped me learn the value of a dollar and working hard. The worst job I probably had, making 265 cold calls a day, selling, scrubbed data for K through 12 education systems when I was going through my master's program. But I did learn how to get told no quite a bit and, how to use the phone to sell effectively. And so, but I would say, it took a lot of motivation for me every single day to pick up the phone 265 times and make those calls, document those calls, and just keep at it, not seeing any results. That's probably the worst job I've ever had.
Well, maybe let's tie that back into today. I mean, how are you going about finding the deals that you've been finding? Is it through cold calling or is it through some other means?
Yeah, so it's definitely through cold calling. 100 calls a day is what our team is putting out there in the marketplace, which is great. I would like to 10x that, but right now that's where we're at. A lot of those come from relationships that we've cultivated over a period of time. We have relationships with brokers, obviously, to bring projects. But we have kind of a four-headed approach. We also do focus on co-GP relationships. So somebody can bring in kind of a new project and they might have a lead on something. That's a big piece of it as well. And then looking at different asset classes and being creative in deal structuring. Those all those different kind of approaches allow us to bring new projects into the pipeline. We have a full-time underwriting resource that we utilize for first looks on deals. So they get the T12 and rent rolls. It gets sent to them and then finally gets put onto a project management board where then the three principals get into it and take a look at it. And then it goes to LOI. So we've got a pretty good process around that right now. But, that's where the gold is made. And it's a velocity game. And I know that you guys are the standard in looking at the amount of deals that you do on a regular basis to get to the projects that you are. I mean, nobody wants to hear it's a numbers game, but I mean, when you're as competitive as it is right now in the marketplace, it can be a numbers game, and you will find the needle in the haystack if you continue to work through it.
Amen. It is a numbers game. Yeah, we definitely have learned that it's important to look at basically everything on the market. We look at somewhere between 800 and 1,500 deals every week and making about 16 offers a week, and about 1 out of 16 of those we're putting under contract, and 2 out of 3 of those pass our DD, although lately it's been 1 out of 3 have passed our DD. So it's definitely a more competitive and economy and environment, and that means you do need to 10x that. You got to look at 10 times more things because that's the ratio of deals that you're going to be able to find.
That's impressive, man. That is so impressive what you guys are being able to do on that front. That's incredible.
Thank you. And the feeling's mutual. Anyways, let's keep moving forward. I'd love to know, how does Logan Freeman invest in himself?
If you're watching this, obviously you can see the books behind me. What you can't see is another 100 books sitting on my desk here because I'm running out of space back here. I have to get some more space for those. So I'm a voracious reader. I use Audible. I have the Wall Street Journal app that I listen to articles on. I read articles on. I have book summary apps that actually take the books that I want to read and then summarize them. And it saved me a lot of time not buying those books and trying to read all of those. I think the most important thing, though, is continuing to be a good listener. And the way I invest in myself is put myself around people playing the game at a higher level, ask good questions and listen. That is the number one thing. I have a really strict morning routine where I do my prayer, my meditation, my breathing exercises, and then physical exercise as well is how I kind of invest in myself. And then setting boundaries on my phone and my work. So whenever I'm with my family, I'm with certain individuals, I'm being very present. Those are all ways that I invest in myself right now.
Love it. Good stuff right there. And how does Logan Freeman invest in the world or the community?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question. And, very involved with our church here in Kansas City. So, big Catholic guy. So trying to make sure I spend a lot of time helping individuals through the church and the different organizations and initiatives that they have. And then additionally, I sit on the board of directors of a nonprofit here called Restart, and their focus is to help end homelessness here in Kansas City. And so, just today at 2:00, I've got a board meeting that I have to sit in, and I get to sit in. I get to sit in and try to add value. And I'm working with them on multiple projects to place their clientele into deals that we are developing and or own already.
To that point, Logan, I don't know if you know how much of an impact you had on me when you and I were driving in Kansas City. I was in your car and we drove past, I don't know if you remember this, we saw a homeless person, at the stoplight, and you stopped and you talked to him and you basically gave him all the money and change that you had sitting in your car. And then you actually had a human being interaction, asking him if he was aware of the resources and the availability. I forgot exactly what you said, but you were basically helping him. And for me, what came to me is you weren't just trying to give a man a fish. You were teaching. You were trying to teach a man how to fish. And so, it was very impressive and had an impact on me.
I forgot about that, but it's just because of that's kind of ingrained in what we do on a regular basis. I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I've been blessed on a lot of different fronts. And I want to make sure I pass that along and not just give, but try to give, like you said, resources for somebody to try to elevate themselves. You have to try to meet people where they're at, but being able to give them some resources to help themselves is very important in those situations.
Love it. Well, let's transition into the last question, which is, how does Logan Freeman define success?
The best definition of success I've ever heard came from John Wooden. And I read his book, The Pyramid of Success, a long time ago. And it's the self-satisfaction knowing that I did the best job that I'm capable of doing. And I can't control everything. And what I can control is my response to everything and the work that I put in on a regular basis. And so that's how I define success. And that's how John Wooden defined success for a long time. And I think it's been really helpful for a lot of people. Obviously, he was a very successful man, and his legacy continues to live on.
Love that. What a great quote. And so, Logan, how can people reach out to you?
Absolutely. We're really active on LinkedIn. So find us on LinkedIn. ftwinvestmentsllc.com is our website. You can search Logan Freeman, Mr. Kansas City. I'll pop up on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message, DM. I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Well, on that note, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think that's it, man. I think we've added a lot of value today. I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you, getting on this podcast circuit and interviewing smart people. I'm excited to tune in and add this back into the regular listening, man. I'm excited to see how this journey goes for you.
My pleasure. We're just in the beginning of the journey, and thanks to everyone for listening. And I guess we'll wrap it up. This is another episode of the Real Estate Niche Show. Logan Freeman, thank you for being here. It's an honor to be able to interview and to be friends. So I'm really proud of it. I'm cheering for Mr. Kansas City and the FTW team, and just know that HJH is here to support you in any way that we can along the journey as well. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. All right, you guys have a great day. I'll figure out how to wrap these podcasts one day, but for now, subscribe, hit the whatever button, and we'll talk to y'all soon. All right.
See you guys later.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Real Estate Niche Show. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, Please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me or the show, you can follow me on Instagram at Ben Kogut and at The Real Estate Niche Show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.